First and 10 for the 19. Salter with a snap, fakes the handoff, backpedal, scanning, looking, throws it into the end zone. Catch in the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Colorado!
Draylen Miller with a receiving touchdown. He played some running back in that ball game as well. That put the Buffaloes up 21-17. They led after 3, but gave up a touchdown in the fourth quarter, ended up falling 24-21 to number 25, BYU here at Folsom Field. Hi, everybody. Voice of the bus, Mark Johnson, Coach Gary Barnett. That's one of those, and Coach Prime talked about in a press conference. It kills you as a coach because you had a chance. It was sitting there, and you gave it away.
No question. I mean, BYU doesn't hand you a game like this very often.
Yeah.
And it was there. And we had a lot of energy early, and then came back and got another score despite, I mean, you're going to have ups and downs in these games, especially when you're playing a good team. But then we made mistakes at the time that you just can't make a mistake. And good teams don't make those mistakes. Average teams make those mistakes at those times, and that's what happened to us tonight.
We expected coming in, BYU had been averaging 266 yards rushing a ball game. They ended up with just over 200 yards. But, Gary, it wasn't what we expected here. They ran the quarterback and threw the ball. That was kind of their offense tonight.
Well, it was, but I'm not so sure it wasn't because we sort of stuffed the run early, and but they went right to throwing the ball and the quarterback running the ball, and he was the most effective runner tonight. He rushed for more yards than anybody. And before, both running backs had scored on big runs and had put a lot of yardage on people. But this guy was a real football player. He's a throwback football player, and I think it's sort of cool he wears number 47.
Yeah,
but he's a heck of a player. But Draylen Miller had a heck of a game, too.
Yeah, Draylen Miller is going to see more time at running back. Prime talked about that in the postgame. Up front, the question for us coming in was, could Colorado's offensive and defensive lines, go match, nose to nose, if you will, with the offensive and defensive front for BYU? Up front, they played pretty well.
I think they did. I think both sides of the ball up front played pretty well. I think we got exposed in the secondary, and that was pretty obvious as the game went on, partially because of their scheme, but partially because of some injuries. We got exposed there. We couldn't get the ball thrown down the field either. I don't know why. I don't know whether it wasn't called or whether it wasn't getting thrown. And then we had that really tough penalty on Salter's scramble that might have made a difference in the game. And so, but that stuff happens to you when you don't have it all together.
Yeah, Caden Salter had a 45-yard scramble, and there was a holding call on one of the wide receivers for the Buffaloes. Coach Prime had some pointed comments in his post-game press conference. He said the moment was too big for some of my guys. That's kind of a scathing, assessment of your players.
It is, but for the most part, he's always told it the way it is, I think. And there's times when you have to say those things. And, you don't know which way it's going to go for you.
Yeah.
But this is about as blunt as I've heard him in a long time, I think. So we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, it's the next game really that makes a difference now in how we handle this as a team and how they handle it as a coaching staff.
Well, one thing about Prime is this, right? There was never a moment that was too big for him, and so this is a foreign territory for a guy like that. He doesn't understand this because he rose to the occasion all the time. Hey, before we let you go here, next week we're on the road. TCU down in Fort Worth, Texas. They just got beat in a hard-fought game. It was a war against Arizona State. That's a physical football team we're going to see next week.
It's a very physical football team, and they lost. Really, it was the way they lost was disheartening, and so I'm interested to see how they respond to what happened to them. Just like I'm interested to see how we respond after this game, because it was right there for us.
It was a very entertaining college football game. The Buffs led at the end of the first quarter, at halftime. At the end of the third quarter, when the final gun sounded, though, it was 24-21. BYU of your Colorado Buffaloes. That's the Coach Gary Barnett. Now let's chat with our Sideline reporter, Andy Lindahl.
Back as a running back. They direct snap this one to Draylen Miller. Runs up inside. He bowls over a defender to the end zone. That was bone on bone. And Miller wins that battle.
Well, we saw Draylen Miller off the top. Draylen Miller there in the Wildcat with a rushing touchdown. Prime said we're going to see more of him all over the field. Dynamic athlete. They want the ball in his hands. Andy Lindahl, our Sideline reporter. Voice of the bus, Mark Johnson. 24-21. BYU over Colorado. Kind of a quiet tunnel down there after the ball game, wasn't it?
It was empty, pretty much. It was weird. I've never seen anything like that. Even when you lose, sometimes you have guys milling around and talking to each other and coaches coming out and discussing things. That thing was bare empty tonight. And I don't know. I think a lot of people know that this is a game that even if you just are trying to get bowl eligible, this could be one of the ones that you look at if you don't get to that 6th win.
We knew this was going to be a tough game. BYU's a quality program, always very physical. That was one thing I come out of this, at least from a positive standpoint. We played with them on the offensive and defensive fronts. It was physical up front, and the bigs for Colorado played well.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are a lot of good things to take out of this, Mark, but, you know, Prime has set a pretty good bar where you don't want to hear about excuses for losses. Yeah. But, you know, look, I was very worried prior to the game. I think you were too. We talked about it all pregame. We were worried about BYU doing the same things the other 3 or 4 opponents have done to Colorado, where they've run up the middle on them. Yeah. They've run well on them. They've pushed them around a little bit.
They didn't run up the middle in this ball.
No, they kept going wide.
The
now, again, you got to give them credit that eye candy. This defense still has to keep their eyes in the right spot. They can't lose their assignments and those jet sweeps and everything. They got them there. But from a physicality standpoint, Colorado came out and I think showed a little of that physicality they were hoping to show, both offensive and defensively. They had the run game going. They were pushing the pile. We saw pretty consistent stick to it. It's just, you know, you get these lulls that I can't explain, and they just can't afford those right now.
Yeah, the Buffaloes end up falling 24-21. This doesn't get easy. This is a four-game stretch right now. Coming to this weekend, it was 4 ranked opponents. Now TCU's going to fall out of the top. They were 24th. They'll fall out of the top 25. Andy, you got to. This is some tough sledding right here, but you got to win some of these ball games in this stretch.
Yeah, you have to. You know, you got TCU and then you got Iowa State right back here, and so you got to get some things figured out. And Caden Salter again came out and looked all right to begin with, and then kind of the confident, cocky Caden Salter that I liked a week ago, that was really taking charge of the team. We didn't see him the whole game tonight. I'm not quite sure why. He made some good throws. The throw to Draylon Miller, that was a good one.
Great throw.
He had that defensive back in trail. He had another safety looking.
Dropped it right over the top.
Dropped it right over the top, but he just doesn't feel comfortable throwing that ball enough for my liking sometimes. And look, you can't do everything 3, 4, 5 yards out to the side, right, Mark? Yeah. You and I both know, especially with some of the athletes, you got a receiver. You got to get them moving. You just got to push the ball downfield. You don't have a choice.
You know, we became so accustomed last year. You know, Pat Shermer, I've said it before, every time he and I would talk about Shedeur, he'd call him that heroic son of a gun. He was always going to make a play. You had the Heisman Trophy winner. You had Jimmy Horn, and on down the line. There were guys that rose to the occasion. That's what Prime was getting at in the postgame when he talked about the moment being too big. Guys that rise and make plays in key moments.
You're absolutely right. Now, it's funny because Prime was the ultimate rise to the moment kind of player, because that's why he got the nickname Prime Time. But here's the other thing I go back to, and this is what's tough, and it's modern college football, but the Buffs take more advantage of it than others. When you're constantly putting a team together that is new and getting used to each other, you just wonder about some of the chemistry. You know what I mean, Mark? Like, that's where I think you lose some of it. Whether it's the offensive side of the ball, where, again, I thought about it. We had the receiver pounding the ground. Maybe it was Draylon Miller or Omarion Miller. One of them was out on that last play where the interception was thrown, and he and Caden Salter didn't see the same end spot to the play. Yeah. And again, they haven't played together. Last year we had Travis and Shedeur. They'd played together forever, and they knew what to do in these moments. There's still a chemistry thing going on this team that it may take till the middle of the season to find it, but they don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, that was the game, the play that sealed it, rather. It was Omarion Miller out there, and he saw one thing, and Caden saw another, and Glasgow picked it off and sealed the game. Next week, the Buffs are on the road down in Fort Worth, Texas, to take on the Horned Frogs at TCU. By relative terms, it's an early game. It's 5:30 instead of 8:30 at night. We'll hit the air at 3:30 on the Colorado Football Network. Bobby Passavino will be in for Andy and that one, along with Coach Gary Barnett and yours truly. But the Buffs fall to number 25 BYU 24-21 here at Folsom Field. Thanks for joining us.